Right, good afternoon, everybody, and a big warm welcome to everyone who's attending today for this webinar session titled An Employer's Introduction to Apprenticeships. I'm Tom Hegarty, CEO of SimplyBiz and Chair of the New Talent Alliance, and I'll be introducing the session today. In addition to my role at SimplyBiz and the work that I do for the New Talent Alliance, I'm also chair of the Trailblazer groups for apprenticeships within the financial advice sector. So an area I have some good expertise on, and I'm really passionate about this as a route to support more career journeys in our sector as well. So if when many people think about apprenticeships or the term apprenticeships, many think or might think of the general definition of apprenticeships, or even Alan Sugar on the BBC, or Donald Trump for that matter, who ran the US version of The Apprentice. According to the dictionary, an apprentice is a person who is learning a trade from a skilled employer, having agreed to work for a fixed period at low wages. However, my terminology regarding this webinar on apprenticeships is very much to do with the government initiative and the funding that they provide, which they've developed significantly from around 2015, and the funding that's created around this as well. So the government made a concerted effort to offer the option of apprenticeships as an alternative to other forms of further education, which effectively combined work and study together to give people an opportunity to move forward with their professional development and career plans. In the past, apprenticeships have been very focused on trades, but more recently they've widened in scope significantly to include more professional career paths where qualifications go up to even degree level and beyond. So over the next hour, we're going to be looking to provide you with an introduction to apprenticeships for employers. And I'm delighted to be joined by Natalie Dawes, who is a candidate support trainer and business development advisor at the Davies Group. Jude Pilcher, who is Client Success and Growth Director at the Davies Group, and John Somerville, who's Director of Financial Services at the London Institute of Banking and Finance. So this webinar today will outline some of the basics around what apprenticeships are, how they work, and why they're important within the financial advice sector. We have actually got learning objectives for you today as well, which is firstly to understand the strategy of the New Talent Alliance and why we need to help firms recruit, train, develop, manage, and retain talent in their businesses. Secondly, to explore the basic mechanics of apprenticeships in England and how they're funded. Thirdly, learn about some specific updates recently made to apprenticeships, especially in financial advice and paraplanning. And finally, explore how apprenticeships could be used as a training and development pathway for new and existing talent. However, before we move on to the details around apprenticeships, I wanted to firstly give you a very brief introduction to the New Talent Alliance and what we're aiming to achieve. So the New Talent Alliance was founded in March 2024 as a working group within the wider Consumer Duty Alliance to help firms recruit, train, develop, manage, and retain talent within their businesses, which will support business growth and succession planning, particularly within small and medium-sized firms. We created a strategy which is threefold, which is engage, inspire, and support. With engage, it means we're trying to engage with all stakeholders across the sector to raise awareness of the NTA initiative and help promote careers in advice to new talent through elevating the value of advice and being seen as an attractive profession of choice. Secondly, inspire, which is we're looking to inspire potential employers to recruit and develop new talent within their businesses. Whether they're looking to grow their business or create a succession plan, we need to encourage employers to see the benefits of bringing new talent into their firms. And then thirdly, we're looking to support all firms that are keen to recruit new talent on how to do this by providing toolkits, guidance, good practice on how to attract, recruit, train, develop, manage, and retain new talent for their businesses. Now, the main area that the NTA is trying to support really is helping to address the changing demographics within the supply chain of the financial advice sector. So there's a chart here with some data, which is over 3 different time periods from August 2022 to February 2025, which is over a 2.5-year period. The top part in the blue shows the number of firms in the UK who are from the retail investment advice sector, and that's reduced over the last 2.5 years by 12%. Then in the bottom half, in the purple area, is the number of advisors broken down by age demographic as well. And that overall number has increased by 15%. Now, the hypothesis here is overall that larger firms within the sector are consolidating the smaller firms. And in addition, they're producing also the lion's share of new advisors into the sector through their various academies. So the increase in advisor numbers is positive. But in addition to the advice gap, there's this polarization shift where larger firms are getting bigger and the smaller firms are diminishing. This issue is therefore limiting choice to the consumer for their options to support their advice needs. And within the NTA, we're supportive of all firms offering advice, but it's important that we support the continuity of diversity and competition within the advice sector, which ensures that all firms have the ability to recruit, train, develop, manage new talent, and not just the large firms. So we're therefore looking to share the expertise to smaller firms who have less experience, less funding, or knowledge to grow their businesses with new talent. So hopefully that gives you an outline of the New Talent Alliance and what we're trying to achieve. So what I'm now going to do is hand over to John Somerville, and he's going to go through some of the mechanics of how apprenticeships work and how they could provide a potential solution to this conundrum. Over to you, John.
There you go. But I'll tell you, you'd have thought after all this time of using digital ways of communicating, I'd have remembered how to unmute myself. But a warm welcome to everybody. Thank you for attending today. Really exciting, actually. The apprenticeship space is growing in interest, growing in numbers. It's becoming a real movement again. I think what we want to try and do today is to try and break a few myths down, try and give you a bit of an idea of the mechanics. For those of you out there that might think, actually, this might not be for me, or having difficulty understanding, where you fit into it, I can assure you there's a pathway that will enable you to be part of the apprenticeship standards and to be able to offer apprenticeships and bring new talent into your businesses. And the whole point of this is that Skills England want to ensure that we increase the number of financial advisors and people who work in the finance sector across the whole of the UK. They see this as one of the priorities to grow. And if you look at any educational report, the finance industry is exceptionally well funded and very, very well supported from a government perspective in a growth environment over the next few years. So we find this very, very exciting. From an LIBF perspective, we are, first of all, we've been very excited to be part of the NTA for a very, very long time. We were there from the start, really, to help form it. We've seen some extremely excellent engagement from the industry as far as what they need to do to bring new talent on. And there's more we can do. And this is part of what we're trying to do, is to ensure that the communications are very, very clear to everybody concerned. From an LIBF perspective, we are about to offer a brand new offering to the financial services sector for level 3, level 4, and level 6 apprenticeship schemes. Watch this space, press announcements, etc., going out on the 24th of November. I've got to say that and get my plug in. But genuinely, this is for the industry. It's something that will enable you to get more recruits through, support them throughout their journey and their apprenticeship journey. So if we can move to the next slide, we can start breaking down some of these myths. And the first one is who's eligible. And it is eligible from 16 plus. Now, you'll probably say, hang on a minute, but my apprentices are likely to be 18 plus. Actually, starting them at 16 is a really good idea. There is a level 3 financial administrator apprenticeship, which doesn't require a qualification, but it requires a training program, which a training provider can give you. This is really important because this is the opportunity to bring somebody on an apprenticeship scheme into your business and then gain a real loyalty to your business on an ongoing basis. I think this is something that's vital to the industry. They need to be living in England to draw down the apprenticeship levy. That is true. In the devolved governments around the UK, there are different funding strategies in Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales. They are particular to those particular countries, but they do fund things, and it's worthwhile ensuring that you understand what those are. We have a scale of those. We're only going to concentrate on the funding in England today. But if you are interested in countries outside of that, then please get in touch and we'll be happy to talk you through those. Finally, not in full-time education. So this is for school leavers. But what I will say on this, not in full-time education, is an interesting point when it comes to apprenticeships, especially when it comes to those that are looking to do further studies and move into degrees. The comparison between somebody who moves off, gets a degree in a potential area that may not be their full-time career once they leave university, and they've developed a huge amount of debt, and they haven't started on the career path, and they haven't been earning any money, is a real problem for many, many students. And those of you that are aware of this or have potential children or family who have been through the university education system, they'll know that finding a job for graduates at the moment is very, very competitive and extremely challenging. Whereas if you are able to bring an apprentice on and bring them through the school system and bring them through where they're earning money, developing a career, not building up any debt, and at the end of it have a job which they have trained for and are loyal to, and a firm that they're loyal to, provides far greater value than the actual apprenticeship is worth in a lot of respects. So the greater than the sum of its parts, I think, is a very apt phrase here, and I think that suits this down to the ground. If we can move to the next slide. So, as it says there, earn as an employee. I think I've pretty much covered that already. Gain qualifications. So, gaining qualifications at level 3, level 4, level 6, degree apprenticeships. Come out of it as a chartered advisor before, for those students that are going through that, it's very, very powerful. And also to attract that new talent in, it's a powerful job advert, if you like, to be able to say that we will support you through this particular program. And develop skills. The beauty about this, and I'll talk about on the job and off the job in just a second, but to develop skills that are molded to the business that we are in as a financial services profession is absolutely vital. Skills that you wouldn't normally get in the education system. If you put somebody through a degree program, they would learn an enormous amount of technical knowledge, come out with a degree which is very valued, but actually having the skills to be able to do the job are probably not there. And this is where apprenticeships really win, in my opinion, over going off to university. And I'm not saying don't ever go, a university has a place for many, many people, but for a lot of people who want to come into financial services, this is a perfect route to develop not just knowledge, but a huge amount of skill. Moving on to the next slide. Oh, see, Natalie, it's just so seamless. It's brilliant. You'll see how they work. So apprentices will spend 80% of their time in the workplace, and their employer will provide that training. And 20% of it, as a rule, apprentices, I should say, need to spend off the job. And the training provider, such as ourselves, Davies Group, and various others, will provide that training for those individuals. And those programs will be written and agreed with by us and by other training providers to ensure that they fit it, that you can then fit in with that program. But the beauty of it is something that is a well-trodden pathway for training providers, and they can provide it. Of course, the beauty of it is for those that are expert in the financial services sector, being able to offer the qualification that they're very familiar with at the same time is absolutely a perfect match made in heaven, if you like, between those providers. Moving on to the next slide. So some stats for you. So over 800 different apprenticeship standards currently available in England. That's, as I say, that's the devolved policy. There are other programs that are recognised in the devolved governments, but 800 different programs. So there's an enormous amount of interest in these areas from all different industries. And at the moment, 736,530. Our head of apprenticeships at LIBF has provided me with these latest figures, and it's very, very precise. But this is the number of people that are participating in apprenticeships in England in the academic year 23 to 24. 48% of apprenticeships started in 23-24 were people over 25 years old. So this is a really interesting fact. A lot of people think that if you're an apprentice, you've got to be young. That's not the case. Apprenticeships fit in perfectly with career changes, people moving from one job to another. That's absolutely ideal. And also the beauty about apprenticeship schemes, if you are starting young, but you want to dip in, then dip out, then dip back in again and have pauses in between the different programs, you can do that as well. And that, I think, is a real massive advantage in any educational system where you can keep coming back in and out. But what we always do suggest is that if they are dipping out, that there is a plan to bring them back in. The trouble with stopping studying is getting people to start studying again. And that's always a bit of can be a bit of a challenge. And then finally on this slide, 79% of apprenticeships started in 23-24 were at advanced or higher level. So these are students that want to go on, become chartered, get level 6 qualifications, get a degree apprenticeship level. And the banks have been doing this for many, many years. And we've been providing level 6 studies for banks for a long, long time, hence the reason we are LIBF, Banking Federal Institute. So it is very important that the banks recognise that getting college leavers to study with them and to learn, they've been doing it for years. And it's something that really the financial services sector really need to get into as soon as possible and come into it in a very, very big way. Moving on to the next slide. So the standards. We've got several different standards. You've got intermediate level 2, advanced level 3. So level 3 apprenticeships actually include mortgage apprenticeships, interestingly as well. Higher levels 4, which is the financial advice diploma level qualification at level 4. Level 5, level 6 is at chartered level, and level 6 and 7 equivalent to degree level apprenticeships. The duration for level, certainly at level 3, has moved from 12 months recently down to 8 months and can be up to 5 years to complete in total. But as I've said, that is a total and can be dipped in and out. So it doesn't mean that it has to be done concurrently. And the funding band, there are 30 different funding bands ranging from £1,500 to £27,000. So you can, Tom and everybody else will sort of talk you through what each one of these bands is worth later on. But I can assure you that the funding band for a student will more than cover all of their studies and all of their training and the qualifications involved. Really, the training providers will draw that funding for you. You don't have to do any administration yourself. So as a business, it's ideal to hand over to a training partner who will be able to do all that administration for you, be able to draw from the levy pot itself, and away you go. So moving on to the next slide. Okay, so who's involved? And funny enough, I was looking at this. So we've got apprentice employer, training provider, and endpoint assessment organisation, which I'll talk you through in a second. There is actually one other interested party in this as well, as it happens, which is parents. So if you think about from an apprentice point of view, especially if they're starting young, some parents may have aspirations for their children to go off to university and don't realise that apprenticeships are a choice. And I think that an education in that respect as well, so that parents are brought into that process, especially with younger apprentices, I think is extremely vital in that part of the process. But apprentices attending all of on-the-job training and recording the hours, engaging in apprenticeships and completing all training, and have regular progress reviews with their employer, all these, and the training provider. That's their responsibility, as well as learning all of the skills and knowledge needed to complete their apprenticeship program. The employer has several responsibilities: contributing to the training plan, pay co-investment towards the apprenticeship. So effectively, if the firm pays into the levy pot themselves, and they can draw all of the money for themselves. If they are participating in a scheme where they draw from another levy pot, then they have to pay 5% towards the total cost. They are there to coach, mentor, support the apprentices' learning needs throughout the programme and give the apprentices time to complete off-the-job training. That's absolutely vital. We have to accept that there is time needed for those people to study. The training provider will discuss the training plans with the employer, deliver on the job off-the-job training, and prepare the apprentice for their endpoint assessment. So the endpoint assessment is effectively the final exam, if you'd like to call it that. It doesn't actually incorporate the exam itself, because the exam itself is generally if a qualification is needed. But the endpoint assessment organisation will create an assessment plan for the apprentice and independently conduct the assessment at the end of the apprenticeship time. Another little myth within all of this as well is that the apprentice may not complete the endpoint assessment, at which point it's always a worry by the employer that they're not going to get full funding. That's not the case at all. All employers will have the ability to draw down funding on a monthly basis from month 2 of the apprentice joining the scheme. If they drop off early, clearly the funding will end, but there is no clawback of any of the funding that's been drawn down. And so effectively all the training to that point will have been paid for, and there will be no debt to the employer. I think that is one of the things that a lot of employers are particularly worried about and shouldn't be. It is down to the training provider that will ensure that all of those funding requirements are taken. If you could move to the next slide for me, please. Right, okay, so here's the funding. So from April 2017, apprentices are funded by a levy on UK businesses with a salary roll of over £303 million. This uses a digital accounting system for collecting the levy and paying training providers. So it's that accounting system that we as training providers will draw from, and the employer doesn't need to get involved in any of that part of the process. For levy paying employers, all UK businesses with a payroll of over £303 million a year pay 0.5% of payroll into that levy pot monthly. That is happening now. And for those, we hear all sorts of stories about some employers just treat it as a tax and don't really utilize that money, which is such a shame. And the levy pot at the moment stands an enormous amount of money. You can utilize levy pot to pay for apprenticeship training within their own organization. Unused levy money will expire after 2 years and can then be used by the government. So for non-specified reasons as well. So it just goes into the government coffers. For non-levy paying employers, all UK businesses with a payroll under £3 million per year do not need to pay towards the apprenticeship levy, but they can still utilise that funding. And as I've already said, that employer pays 5% of training costs and the government pays 95% of it. So just because you don't pay into the levy does not mean you cannot draw from it. And I think this is another myth busted, hopefully, on this particular call, and you will get, you'll know now that you can draw from that money. Right, last slide, I think that might be it. That is it. Right. Okay. That's me. You'll be pleased to know, or not. Hopefully that's been educational. It's certainly helped you out. I'm going to hand over now to Jude, who's going to take on from me and give you a little bit more information on Level 4 Power Planner and Financial Planner Apprenticeship Standards. Over to you, Jude.
Thank you, John. Lovely to join you all this afternoon. I'm just going to start by introducing myself. So, Jude Pilcher, I started in financial services back in 1986. And the reason I wanted to tell you that, I was only 1 at the time, just to emphasise that. But actually, I left school at 15. I only ever wanted to work in financial services. And people often say, is there somebody who only ever wanted to do that? And the answer was yes, me. But back then, you couldn't work in the industry until you were 18. I was lucky to be employed when I was 17 and a half. Because I kept writing to the local insurance company saying, please, I want to come. And I was lucky to be put on an apprenticeship. So my life's come full circle. I got the career that I've wanted. I've had amazing operational roles in financial services for a number of years. I then moved on to learning and development. And now it's a time to give back and say, there is so many opportunities out there for people to grow and develop in our industry. And more importantly, as John alluded to, we can get some government funding to do it. So I'm here today to talk through the Level 4 Paraplanning and Financial Planner Apprenticeship Standard. Next slide, please, Natalie. Now, what I've done here is a little bit of a summary, but up until this year, there were actually 2 apprenticeships. There was one for a paraplanner and one for a financial planner. Now, led by Tom on the Trailblazer group, they've brought the 2 together, and this has made a really robust standard. And what I like about it is there are some core competencies, knowledge, skills and behaviours, because every apprenticeship it's got 3 core components, knowledge, skills and behaviours. And then there's pathways, one focusing on paraplanner and one focusing on financial planner. So the important thing to note is the knowledge, skills and behaviours have been written by employers, led by Tom, so we know they are the things that employers want to see. Now, this is a higher level apprenticeship. The duration was concluded by the Trailblazer group to be 24 months plus 5 months of an endpoint assessment. Not all training providers are sticking to 24 months. For example, here at Davies, we're doing it in 18 months and having a 5-month endpoint assessment. And the only reason we've changed that is from speaking to clients, that was their preference. But each training provider, and as John alluded to, there's the LIBF, there's Davies, and a number of others, will have their own unique way of delivering this standard. The funding band is 13,000. Again, if you're a levy payer, that 13,000 comes from your levy pot, and which is obviously government funding. If you're not a levy payer, 5% of that is £650. But more importantly, if you take on an apprentice under the age of 22, the government pay all of that for you. So it's a massive savings. All you're doing is paying for the salary for the individual. I've alluded to some knowledge, skills and behaviours here, but I'm not going to sit here and talk through them. This particular webinar and the slide deck will be on the NTA website, and on there, on a slide later, there's a link to the actual standard so you can see more information. I think the most important thing to recognise is out of that 13,000 funding band, the learner will come out with 2 professional qualifications. The Level 4 Paraplanner, Financial Planner Apprenticeship, plus one of the official qualifications, which will either be by the Chartered Insurance Institute, which will be the Diploma in Regulated Financial Planning, the London Institute of Banking and Finance, which is the Diploma for Financial Advisors, and the Chartered Institute for Securities and Investment, which is the Investment Advice Diploma. So really great opportunity to upskill yourselves. I think what I would like to say about apprenticeships, and I always use the example of me and my brother. My brother is someone who can read a book and pass an exam. Does it mean he's fully understood anything, or has he just got a really good memory of retaining information and passing the exam? I know which I believe he's got. He'd probably say something different. What you get with an apprenticeship is you don't just take the knowledge, you get the skills and behaviours. That builds you into a really competent professional, and you do what we call on-programme learning. So that on-programme learning, 18-24 months, isn't just learning and self-studying your knowledge. You're given access to a coach who has regular contact with you. Every 12 weeks, you have your coach, the learner and the line manager have a conversation. So the employer's always kept up to date, how things are going, what's working, what changes may they need? Do they need exposure to different areas of the business? Everything is covered within those calls, and they are fully supported throughout. And it doesn't matter which training provider you use, the support is there. And the learner is, if you like, wrapped in a comfort blanket to help them through the programme. Next slide, please, Natalie. I alluded to earlier that the apprenticeship has what I call the core competencies in the knowledge, skills and behaviours. I'm a very visual person, so this slide is in there to then say, right, then it splits. You've got knowledge and skills that go down just for the paraplanner or just for the financial planner route. After they've done their on-programme learning, they go into an endpoint assessment. John alluded to this earlier, that's with an independent body, and they are looking to see if all the last 18 months, 12, 24 months, you have really taken on board that knowledge, skills and behaviour, and you are going to be fully competent in the apprenticeship standard that you're doing. The link I've put at the bottom is the link to the government site. So when these are on the New Talent Alliance website, just click on it, up will come the standard. Now, a little bit of a hint here from me. Whenever I do an apprenticeship, and I've done 3 apprenticeships now, and whenever I recommend an apprenticeship to someone, I always tell them to go onto the site, the Skills England site, and I get them to print off the endpoint assessment. The endpoint assessment is everything you need to do to pass or get a distinction in your particular qualification. I call that my Bible to success. So I print that off, and then I know exactly what I'm working towards and what I've got to achieve over those 18, 24 months to get a distinction. That is the key for me, is it's very clear what you've got to achieve. There's nothing hidden, no surprises. It is all set out and designed by the Trailblazer Group, led by Tom from outset. So you can really plan out your sort of next career path, if you like, by using the apprenticeship. Next slide, please, Natalie. So we keep talking about this endpoint assessment, and we often find people get a little bit nervous because they've got very comfortable with their coach and tutor. They've had 18 months building a relationship, and then they're being told, right, you're now going to go off to an independent organisation and they're going to test you. What you've got to remember is the independent company are there to, they want you to pass. They are looking to give the learner a pass. They want to know that the client has got some fantastic learners. So the first thing they do is you are asked to sit the one of the qualifications in the regulatory and ethics part. Remember, I said it was either LIBF, CISI or CII. What will happen, the first thing you have to do is pass the regulation and ethics part of that professional qualification as part of your endpoint assessment. That's the first step. Tick, pass. During your on-programme learning, you will collate a portfolio of evidence. I say portfolio, I'm going to use the expression less is more. They want quality over quantity. 20 pieces of evidence against the knowledge, skills and behaviours is enough. Your portfolio, or the learner's portfolio, is not marked. What it does, it gets sent to the independent assessor. They will look at it, and that gives them the basis of having a professional discussion with the learner. They will have that professional discussion. They might think, oh, there's an area there I want to explore. They haven't gone into quite so much detail on that particular knowledge area. How do they demonstrate that skill? And they will make sure that everything is covered within that professional discussion. And lastly, with this particular standard is a project with a case study financial report. As you can imagine, because of the apprenticeship that it is, you really do need a case study. You get that up front, and you need to be able to produce a financial report. And throughout your on-programme learning, you've been given so many tools. This won't come as difficult for you, because you really will know what you're doing. You'd have done these before, you'd have practiced. So really do not worry about the endpoint assessment at all. Once you've completed those 3, off it goes to the assessor. They will write, they congratulate you with your pass or distinction. And as I mentioned before, you will get 2 certificates. Next slide, please, Natalie. And this is a reminder of the 3 qualifications again. And this is why I think it's really important. We all know that these 3 organisations or awarding body are key for the diploma for financial advisors. This is given as part of this apprenticeship. So whether you go down the CII, CISI or LIBF route, all your training, books, exams are covered within that 13,000 if you're a levy payer, or if you're not a levy payer, £650, or if the learner is under 22, completely free. You wouldn't be able to pay for these for less than that. So it's a fantastic way to get a professional qualification, an apprenticeship, and not just the knowledge, the skills and behaviours to really be either a paraplanner or a financial planner. I think that's my last slide, but one thing I will say, and John did allude to it, is with apprenticeships, there are 800 standards. You can really have a fantastic career pathway. You know, there's the level 3 financial administrator. You can do qualifications in data, management, financial planning. So please take a look at the link to the Skills England website of all the apprenticeship standards that you can do, because there'll be someone in your organisation, doesn't matter how old they are, that could benefit from an apprenticeship. In the Royal Mail, the oldest apprentice is 74. So age is not a barrier, as John alluded to. Just speak to your training provider to find out more of how it can really support your organisation and get them ready for the future. Thank you very much. And now I'm handing, I think, back to Tom.
Yeah, thanks, Jude. And thanks, John, as well, for your contribution earlier as well. So as we've now sort of summarised, we've gone through what apprenticeships are, how they work, how some of the recent changes in apprenticeships for paraplanner and financial planner. However, as Jude says, it's really important to understand that apprenticeships can be used as a career pathway and not just a one-off. There are a whole range of different roles available just within our fairly small financial advice sector that can be applied to any businesses working in this sector. So there are a whole range of roles that could be that could use apprenticeships as part of that journey. So if we just move to the next slide, there's the level 4 apprenticeship standard for paraplanner and financial planner, which is on the Skills England website, and the one that Jude has just discussed. That was actually launched on the 26th of June this year. And if you go to the Skills England website, the page actually looks a little bit like this, and it has the key information there and all of the information that you need to move forward with registering or enrolling within an apprenticeship. However, if you look again with the next slide, there are another range of apprenticeships as well as this level 4 in paraplanning and financial planning. There are other standards which are available. These are just some of those. So there's financial services administrator, which is a level 3 apprenticeship. There's mortgage advisor, which is level 3, and that's currently going through a revision at the moment, which might see an increase in the funding band for that one. There's obviously the paraplanner and financial planner, which Jude covered already. And then there's also one which is a level 6 apprenticeship called financial services professional. Now, that doesn't actually include the chartered financial planning qualifications. but it is called financial services professional and could be recognised as such. So it doesn't necessarily meet the regulatory requirements of sort of chartered level financial planning, but there is some work going on in that space as well. Now, in terms of who are offering these apprenticeships, sorry, again, if you go to the next slide, there are a range of training providers offering different standards that are available. There are certainly, for the level 4 paraplanner and financial planner, on the Skills England website, there are actually, or the government's apprenticeship website, there are 7 training providers that are offering this route. So one is Davies Learning, one is called Simply Academy, one's the LIBF, Skills Edge Training, and then there's 3 others, Skill Cert, Wiser Academy, and Metagidu. All of those are actually listed on the government website for providing those apprenticeships. So you could, or any employer could, go directly to those training providers, and they will have a whole heap of information that they can support you with and give you some more guidance and outlines to how these apprenticeships work in practice. So if I move on to summarize, really, apprenticeships as a route to help introduce new talent to the advice sector, I've divided this slide up into sort of benefits, constraints, and asks. So in terms of benefits, this route is not a golden nugget. It doesn't apply to everybody, and apprenticeships might not be appropriate for everybody, but it's a great option for smaller firms who don't have the training and development resource themselves. Secondly, here is that the cost is subsidised by the government. So as John and Jude alluded to, for small firms, especially employers with that don't meet the actual levy to pay themselves, employers would only pay 5% of the training costs towards that, which for the level 4 paraplanner and financial planner is only £650. And if the apprentice is under 22 at the time, then that 5% isn't paid at all. So all of the funding for this can be covered by the apprenticeship levy. But of course, the constraint of that is only available in England, and unfortunately at the moment, not Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, which is something that we all need to try and see if we can develop those devolved nations to bring out a consistent programme the same as it is in England. In terms of constraints, I'd say it's not a fully outsourced solution. So this isn't something where an employer would pass their apprentice across to a training provider and then not do anything else. Not in the slightest. The employer absolutely needs to get involved and provide lots of coaching, mentoring and support to their apprentice, and not just leave this as an outsourced solution. So the employer involvement should be complementary to the training provider and not just left for one party to deal with that apprentice and try and train and develop them. The other thing to mention is that certainly where there's a regulated role required, the apprenticeship doesn't actually cover the regulatory supervision process for advisors. So the journey to competent advisor status, and that's something that the firm will need to provide themselves or gain some further support with. And the New Talent Alliance is doing some work with the APCC to try and actually get a list of different solutions to support that competent advisor status if firms can't offer that training and develop them themselves. And then thirdly, the asks for employers. This is apprenticeships is a route which is a tremendous opportunity, but it's really important that the employers really engage in the apprenticeship and take the apprentice right the way through to full completion of the apprenticeship. And this means not to drop out of the apprenticeship after the qualifications have been completed or before the endpoint assessment has been completed as well. We really want apprenticeships to be and continue to be a really valuable option as a career pathway, and employers have got a real role to play within that to make sure that they oversee that training and development, as I said earlier, and not just outsource that to a training provider. It needs to be fully engaged with all the way to the end, and by doing that, that will continue to allow this framework to be an option for future employers as well. The other ask is for the employer to really work hard and provide a framework of on-the-job training to be given to the apprentice. So on the job coaching, mentoring and support. So this is clearly a different approach from what John mentioned earlier around a degree course or a university qualification. This is the practical application and of the on-the-job training and the off-the-job qualifications that would be, and knowledge, skill and behavioural competencies that would be developed at the same time. So that's the summary. If you want to find out more, there is a website on the government, the UK government website, which is called Find an Apprenticeship. There's a link there on the slide, so you can see that once this webinar has been finished or has finished as well. And then back to the learning objectives, which is just worth me summarising again or putting on the screen. And that should leave us with some good time for any questions that might have come through as well. So Natalie, over to you. Is there any have there been any questions from anyone?
Hi Tom, not loads of questions in the chat, but I've got a few of my own that we can utilise the time for, which I hope will be helpful for everybody else. I'm sure Jude and John are not surprised that I'm going to pull them in on that as well. There was a little bit of chat that I will just pick up a couple of points. And actually, thank you, Tracy, for raising the points that you have in the chat. And I know, John, you've been sort of communicating back and forth with her as well. But just to raise this point, John, and I'm going to come to you on this one as you've been talking to Tracy. Is there a difference between sort of attaining that higher level apprenticeship and that of a degree that you would go through the usual motions to attain a degree with? What's your thoughts there?
Well, I actually, I don't want to disagree with Tracy, but I actually think that the apprenticeship route, certainly with ourselves at level 6, they graduate in exactly the same way as their peers as graduates, as degree graduates at any of our, and are recognised in exactly the same way. In fact, on our level 6 launch, as I've already mentioned it already, so the 24th of November, blah 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 blah. Our level 6 will also include charter status. So I didn't want to disagree with you, Tom, when you mentioned it. But if anybody that follows our level 6 financial services professional degree apprenticeship program will complete their studies and also be chartered as well, which I think is, in some respects, a step above in certain professions. So I would say, yes, I totally understand that those that go to university see themselves as, because they've effectively gone through the process of going and getting a degree and what have you, and their courses are supposedly at a higher level. But quite honestly, the digital learning playing field has leveled things considerably across all universities. And it has to be said, it's very, very apparent that the university system in the UK is broken. There are 50% of universities that are struggling for funding. The standards of degree programs are not as good as they were 5 years ago, and student responses are diminishing somewhat. So, as far as feedback is concerned, so I'd say that is a much more level playing field, and I think people and certainly employers recognise the practical aspects of somebody taking a degree apprenticeship program over and above somebody who's just been away to study, because it's proofs in the pudding. Those graduates are struggling to find jobs, whereas those people that come through apprenticeships are already in a job, and I know where I'd rather be.
Thanks, John. Much appreciated. And whilst we've been talking, a few more questions have come in, so I'm just going to take those now. Andrew, so if looking at planner apprenticeships, would they need to be an authorised planner? Would they need to be, an authorised planner within 18 to 24 months? Jude, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, thanks, Natalie. So they don't need to be. What it's saying is within 18 to 24 months, they will have all of their professional qualifications. So they'll be level 4 qualified, and they will have their apprenticeship. But as we know, with each company will have their own stance around what they need to do internally, have a mentor, have guidance, etc. So they can be ready, but they don't have to be ready. I think that's the difference there. So someone could, for example, I might be a paraplanner, I might do the 18 to 2 year apprenticeship, and then decide I actually want to go and do something completely different. That is fine. They don't have to then go on to do that role, but we hope this is a opportunity to help them get there.
Brilliant. Thank you, Jude. Question from Emily. What happens if an apprentice decides the course isn't for them? Do they simply withdraw and our funding stops at that point? Tom, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. It's a really good question. I think the message I would give is that I would do everything possible to try and make sure that you go into an apprenticeship fully knowing what is involved, and making sure that the expectations are managed for the apprentice as well. Now, the reason for that is that apprenticeships are governed still by Ofsted and various regulatory requirements. And if the dropout rate becomes too high, then there would be some questions asked by the Skills England or even Ofsted on the validity of that course and that program. So we want to encourage people who go on to an apprenticeship program to stick at it all the way through. So I would just encourage that. The answer to the question in reality is that if somebody decides the course isn't for them, they can just withdraw and drop off, and the funding would stop at that point. But as I say, I think we really, as a sector, need to encourage this route to stay available, and therefore encourage people to enroll in an apprenticeship and stick at it all the way through to the end if they can.
Agreed. Question from David. Is it possible for someone to do a paraplanner apprenticeship and then upgrade or top up to financial planner, or do they have to start a new apprenticeship? Jude, going to come to you on that one.
Yeah, so although there's two pathways, David, what happens is the core is the same. So if I decided to go down the paraplanner route, for example, I would spend my 18 months, 2 years, but I would still get, if I choose the CII as an example, my RO1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. So I've got all of the CII requirements. I've had a really good foundation knowledge as a paraplanner. It shouldn't be that difficult to work with my organisation to then move me over to be a financial planner. I don't need to start again because I've already gained lots of knowledge, skills and behaviours. The beauty of this also is that while you're on an apprenticeship, you have sessions with others that are on the same apprenticeship. They may be on the financial advisor pathways. You get talking to one another, you start networking. So you'll learn a lot just from that as well, and that'll help you decide where you'd like to go after that.
Brilliant. Thanks, Jude. No more questions in the chat. We have got a few more minutes left, so if anybody has got any questions, please do feel free to chuck them in there. But I have got a couple of questions of my own. So we've spent a lot of this webinar talking about requirements for apprenticeships, what's possible, what's not, all of that kind of stuff. And something I kept coming back to in my mind whilst we were talking through is around the employer responsibilities. So for anybody that is attending this webinar as a potential employer or is considering this route to bring people into their business, what are those responsibilities? What does it look like? Is it as scary as it sounds? And I would absolutely think not, but can we bring some life to that? John, do you want to take something on there?
Yeah, why not? So yeah, it's a brilliant question as well, because employee apprentice walks in your door day one, it's like, right, what do we do now then? And what you've got to remember is there is a plan. So your training provider will provide a plan, literally a monthly planner of all the things that need to be covered, what needs to be covered on the off-the-job training, what training needs to happen on the on-the-job training, and that is agreed with the training provider. So depending on the size of the cohort, the number of people that are coming through, a lot of these things are tried and tested, and a lot of these programs are already written with the employer in mind, so that they know exactly what sort of things, what experiences they should be doing on the job, what they should be learning regarding the qualification, and what the off-the-job training should look like. And there will be a full program written for them. And obviously, if there are any tweaks or bespoking that needs to happen, especially with an employer that may have a large cohort or a network that has a large cohort, then all that planning will happen. So rest assured, you're not on your own. The whole point of the funding is to fund things like the training provider ensuring that there is a plan and spending that time, that quality time with both the apprentice and the employer to get the very, very best outcome throughout the course. So I think that's really, really important to note, if that, you know, nobody is ever sort of left on their own within this process. And it is the role of the training provider to ensure, and they're always on hand as well. That's another thing that employers should never be afraid of picking up the phone, dropping an email, having a meeting. If they've got concerns about the apprentice, if they're, you know, they might not be challenged enough, they want more work, they want to try and sort of learn at a slightly different pace. Everybody has a different learning style, and there are things that, you know, we can do as training providers. It's you know, sometimes it's difficult if there is, you know, you've got five individual apprentices and they've all got very, very different needs and they're all in the same building. It can be a bit challenging. You know, so we do our very, very best to make sure it's as simplified as possible. So yeah, absolutely. I did note as well, Natalie, if you don't mind, in the chat there is a response from Tracy, and I just wanted to come back to you, Tracy, which was about the CII compared to what I'm talking about with the LIBF. I can't comment on the CII. All I can tell you is that the CII's qualification takes them to level 6, no further. Ours is a degree apprenticeship. They will get a degree. Simple as that. So don't confuse. Please don't confuse the two. Ours is a degree program. But it still results in chartered and still recognised as an industry standard. So please don't worry about that one so much. And obviously we'll talk afterwards. I've left you my details there. So all good. There's lots more questions coming in, Natalie, actually.
There is, yeah. So I'm just about to wrap you up there, John, because we've got a few more to go through. Another question from Andrew, and I'm going to point this towards Jude if I can, please. So what is the potential, if a potential starter, already has a couple of the exams, are they excluded from an apprenticeship?
So for every apprenticeship, at outset, you have a skills radar call. And that skills radar call is with a professional coach at the training provider, and it will ascertain if they are the right person for that apprenticeship. They're not excluded if they have already got some of the professional qualifications. What happens is the funding band gets reduced. But if they have I've been in the industry for many years and they've got a lot of experience, they may be. So every time there'll be a skills radar call, and they will look and decide what is right for that person. No training provider will put someone on who is overqualified to do the apprenticeship.
Brilliant. Thank you. Nice, concise answer there, Jude. Let's go into here. For the level 4 standard for financial advisor or paraplanner, do they need to do the last regulation? Do they need to do the regulation unit last? I think in short, the answer to that is yes, because it is part of endpoint assessment. I think it'd be good for us to put a bit more on the NTA website actually around endpoint assessment. So I think that's something that we'll take away ourselves. I think we've covered off most questions in here. What I would say at this point, purely because of time, is that if there are any other questions that we've not covered as part of this session, we will take that away and we'll come back to you separately. So Tom, what I'd like to do now, if that's okay, is just come back to you to round up so we can finish the session on time. We don't hold anybody back from their lunch break, if that's okay.
Absolutely. Well, great timing for everybody. Just a big thank you from me to Natalie, John and Jude for supporting this webinar. If you would, everybody as well, obviously follow us on LinkedIn as well. We are looking at our 2026 roadmap at the moment for the New Talent Alliance in terms of what our agenda is and what we're trying to do. But we're continuing to try and support the sector with bringing new talent in and various routes available. Apprenticeships is one of those. So there is more for us to update everybody on, and we'll continue to do that. So thanks everyone for joining. Really appreciate it. And yeah, enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.